Because when you begin to shift your energy to a higher place, Dr. Valerie Hunt writes it this way in her book, Infinite Wisdom. But I do not believe that man can perceive his godlike qualities until his field reaches higher and higher vibrations and attains a greater degree of coherency. No matter how hard we try to receive spiritual guidance, we cannot until our fields are attuned to that vibrational system. It's as you begin to banish the doubt, do what Sage did with the healing of these things that had been on her face for 3 years, and she'd do it in 3 days. As you begin to banish the doubt and come from a place of absolute knowing, that what happens is that you begin to, everything is vibration in this universe, and you begin to vibrate at a different speed. When you begin to see this and do this, it raises the frequency at which you vibrate, and as it does that, you send out a different kind of an energy. And as you send out this energy, it's sort of like the energy that St. Francis speaks about in his famous prayer, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. He doesn't say, Lord, I don't have any peace, please bring me some peace. He said, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is darkness, let me bring light. In other words, you take the darkness, and instead of trying to abolish it or remove it from your life, you convert it through this process of transformation. And in this process, darkness turns to light, hatred turns to love. And I had a momentary experience of being about to collapse with someone on the back of my shoulders who was injured. And St. Francis appeared in just 5 seconds to me, just went like this. And this knee that was about to be, I had had MRIs done on it, it was going to be replaced, was healed in that moment. And I carried this man up 3 stairs to where the Poor Clares were in San Damiano in Italy. It all happened in a moment. And I was shifting the awareness and having this absolute knowing within that I am a piece of infinite consciousness, and there's absolutely nothing that has ever happened or ever will happen that I'm not capable of, because who I am is that. There's no place that I am not. So I still had a great deal of skepticism 4 or 5 years ago. I had been diagnosed with leukemia. Some of the effects were starting to show. I was getting the night sweats. I was getting the bruising in my body. My energy was low. I had to quit doing yoga. I had to slow down. I used to run every day. I couldn't run anymore. I could barely walk. I was getting weaker. My kids noticed it. I noticed it. I saw deterioration taking place. Today, this morning, I was up at 4:45. I already meditated for an hour. I've ran for a half an hour this morning. I did a coffee, and if you want to join me for coffee, I did a little coffee in the morning. And when this is over, I'm going with Cal, who's taken me over to a place because they don't have a pool at the hotel I'm staying at, but I'm going to go do an hour swim. And I have more energy than I can ever remember ever having had in my life. This burning desire thing is really important. I mean, when you read Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, he speaks about the difference between people who live an enriched life and people who don't. He said the only thing that distinguishes this group from this group, highly functioning people from ordinary people, is that these people have a burning desire to do something, and they are willing and determined and fearlessly applying it in their life. They don't listen to anybody else tell them what can or can't be done. So I've believed what Tilopa said back in the 10th century, have a mind that's open to everything and attached to nothing, attached nowhere.
And Neville also said, therefore, to incarnate a new and a greater value of yourself, you must assume that you already are what you want to be, and then live by faith in this assumption. Now, this flies in the face of so much of what you've been told, because you have a tendency to believe that what your eyes and ears tell you is reality. But this is what we know by our senses. Just this little tiny fragment. I can't even get, it's like a millionth of a millimeter. And all that is unknown is in the invisible, in the imagination. And most of our attention is focused on, this is my beliefs and my disbeliefs about what is possible and what isn't possible are here. And it's an endless universe.
There's a river that runs through you, not a river of water, but of energy, of spirit, eternal, quiet, and profoundly alive. You were born into this stream, not to grasp at the banks, not to cling to the rocks, but to flow effortlessly with the current of life. And yet, so many of us have forgotten. We hold on. We resist. We clutch stories and identities and pains like anchors tied to our ankles. We cling to the past, to expectations, to control, to what they said or didn't say, did or didn't do. We tighten our fists around things that are already floating downstream, believing that somehow in our clenching, we are safe. But the soul doesn't cling. The soul flows. The ego clings, that manufactured identity born of comparison and separation. It clings because it fears dissolving. It clings because it believes in lack. It clings because it has been conditioned to survive by controlling, by proving, by protecting a fragile sense of self built entirely on illusion. But the soul knows it cannot be harmed. The soul knows it was never lacking. The soul knows it doesn't need to become anything because it already is everything. It simply flows like wind through trees, like breath in the lungs, like love that does not demand anything in return. When you wake up to this truth, not as a concept, but as a felt reality, you begin to see how much energy has been wasted in holding on to what hurt you, holding on to who hurt you, holding on to who you used to be or who you think you need to become. It is all weight, it is all unnecessary. It is all the ego's attempt to control what the soul already understands, that everything is impermanent, and that impermanence is not the enemy, but the gateway to liberation. You do not need to carry what no longer serves you, not because it is wrong, not because it is bad, but because it is heavy. You were not made for heaviness. You were not made for tightness. You were not made to grasp. You were made to expand, to evolve, to become soft and supple and surrendered to the mysterious rhythm of life. You were made to flow. And flowing is not weakness. It is not passive. It is the most powerful act of trust. It is the choice to no longer resist the current of your own evolution. It is the courage to let go of the known and surrender to the vastness of the unknown. It is the decision to stop trying to control outcomes and start honoring alignment. It is the daily sacred practice of asking, where is life trying to take me, and am I willing to go? So ask yourself now, what are you clinging to? What story? What identity? What memory? What resentment? What version of yourself have you outgrown, but are still performing because it's familiar? And what would it feel like just for a moment to loosen your grip, to unclench your mental fists and allow life to move through you, not around you? Because here's the truth. When you release the need to control, you become available to grace. When you let go, you don't fall, you rise. You rise into the higher frequency of your own being. You rise into the flow state of the soul. You rise into a rhythm that is not frantic or forceful, but deeply peaceful, deeply wise, deeply loving. There is a quiet confidence in those who flow. They do not need to prove, they do not need to rush, they are not seduced by urgency or pressure. They move from presence. They listen to the whispers beneath the noise. They trust the signs. They walk away when it's time. They stay when it's true. They live not by force, but by alignment. You were never meant to swim against the current of your own truth. And what is your truth? That you are not the stories you've been telling yourself. You are not your wounds. You are not your resume or your failures or your reputation. You are not the name they gave you or the roles you were assigned. You are something far more eternal. A soul here for a fleeting moment, learning to remember who you are. And in remembering, you heal. You heal not by adding more to yourself, but by releasing what is not you. You don't become whole by accumulation. You become whole by subtraction. Letting go of the fear, letting go of the shame, letting go of the need for validation, letting go of the timelines, letting go of the weight. You don't need it anymore. You never did. Flowing means saying yes to your own becoming. It means no longer holding yourself hostage to a version of you that was necessary for survival but is no longer aligned with who you're becoming. It means trusting that what is meant for you will never require you to shrink, to strive, or to betray your own peace. Flowing means releasing the people who cannot meet you where you're going, not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with deep gratitude for what they showed you and a quiet bow as you both continue your separate ways. Flowing means grieving what has ended, but not dragging the corpse with you. Flowing means allowing the space in your life to be empty for a while, not rushing to fill it with noise, distraction, or new attachments, but trusting that the empty space is sacred, that the void is the womb of your next becoming, that silence is not absence, but presence preparing you for more. So often we say we want peace, but we are unwilling to release the chaos. We say we want to be free, but we are addicted to our chains. We say we want to flow, but we grip the riverbanks with white knuckles. The soul waits patiently, never pushing, never punishing, just whispering gently, let go, let it flow, I know the way. And when you finally listen, when you finally soften, when you finally surrender, everything changes. Not because the world has changed, but because your inner world is no longer resisting the current of life. You stop trying to swim upstream. You stop arguing with reality. You stop fighting your own expansion. And in that stillness, in that surrender, you remember you were always the river. You were always the flow. You were never the rock. There is a sacred intelligence flowing through all of life, an unspoken harmony that arranges galaxies and opens flowers, that carries the tide and breathes your lungs without needing permission. That same force flows through you. It's not something you must earn. It's not something that depends on your achievements or your past. It is your nature. The soul is not something you possess, it is what you are. And the soul knows how to flow because it is not bound by ego. It does not confuse stillness with stagnation. It does not mistake letting go for losing. It sees the truth clearly, that everything you're afraid of losing was never truly yours, only borrowed for a time, a teacher in disguise, a season in the symphony of your evolution. The ego builds walls, but the soul opens windows. The ego fears death, but the soul knows only transformation. The ego asks, what will they think? The soul asks, what is true for me? And you must decide, moment by moment, breath by breath, whose voice you will follow. Do you want a life that clings or a life that flows? Clinging says, I am not enough, so I must hold on to this person, this job, this image, this pain, or I will disappear. Flowing says, I'm already whole, so I trust that what leaves is no longer aligned and what comes is already mine in spirit. One is fear masquerading as love. The other is love, pure and unshaken by circumstance. Let this moment be the moment you come back to yourself, back to the still, wise, unshakable presence beneath the noise of your mind, back to the space where you don't need to prove anything, where you don't need to fix yourself, where you don't need to get somewhere else. Back to the simple, sacred truth. You are already held. You are already guided. You are already flowing when you stop trying to be the river and allow yourself to become the water. You cannot flow while clinging, and you cannot cling while flowing. The soul invites you into a different kind of power, not the kind that forces outcomes or dominates others, but the kind that rises from radical trust. Trust that what is falling away is making space. Trust that what didn't work was never meant to last. Trust that the timing is perfect, even when it makes no sense to the mind. Trust that something ancient and eternal is always on your side, even when life feels like unraveling, especially then There is beauty in the unraveling. There is grace in the undoing. There is peace in the pause between chapters. And when you stop resisting that space, when you stop trying to rush through the uncomfortable unknown, you will feel something holy begin to open. The weight will lift. The breath will deepen. The tears will soften into prayers. The fight will dissolve into presence. And presence, my friend, is the doorway to the soul. When you are fully here, not regretting the past or rehearsing the future, you remember the only thing that has ever been real, this moment, this breath, this now. And in that now, the need to cling dissolves. Because you see, there is nothing to cling to. There is only this infinite moment of becoming. This is the invitation. This is the path. This is the liberation. To trust your flow more than you trust your fear. Your pain has shaped you, but it does not define you. Your story is sacred, but it is not your prison. You are not bound to what once broke you. You are not required to relive what you've already outgrown. You can thank the past for its lessons and then let it go. Not because you're denying it, but because you're no longer choosing to suffer under its weight. The past is not your home. The soul lives forward. You are not meant to stay where your spirit has already left. You are not meant to dwell in spaces that no longer resonate. You are not meant to repeat patterns that keep you small. You are not meant to make yourself digestible to those who cannot taste the truth of your being. You are not meant to betray your own peace for the comfort of others. You are meant to flow. And to flow, you must trust that letting go is not the end, it is the beginning. The soul doesn't cling to roles, titles, outcomes, or attachments. It doesn't demand proof. It simply flows faithfully, naturally, freely with the source from which it came. You are that source in form. You are that eternal presence expressing itself in a human lifetime. You are not separate from the divine. You are a unique, unrepeatable current in the ocean of God. And when you stop resisting that current, you return home to your deepest truth. I am not this fear. I am not this grasping. I am not this control. I am the one who watches it all come and go, untouched and unafraid. Flowing is not about giving up. It is about giving in. Not to weakness, but to wisdom. Not to chaos, but to the deeper order. Not to apathy, but to alignment. It is the realization that the more tightly you hold on, the more you suffer. And the more you surrender, the more you see life was never working against you. It was always working for your awakening. So breathe, soften, listen, let go of your agenda for a moment and ask the deeper question, what is life trying to show me? Where is it trying to lead me? What truth have I been avoiding? And what would happen if I simply said yes? This is not the path of the world. It is the path of the soul. It is slower, deeper, quieter, but it is also more powerful. It doesn't rush to fix. It doesn't cling to old maps. It doesn't need guarantees. It simply flows because it trusts. And as you begin to live from this place, your life changes. Not always in visible ways, but in foundational ways. You feel lighter, you react less, you forgive more easily, you stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand. You find peace in solitude. You let love find you instead of chasing it. You speak your truth, not to convince, but because it's who you are. You live not from fear, but from freedom. And this is the deepest freedom, not the freedom to control everything, but the freedom from the need to let that be enough for now. Let it be enough to breathe. Let it be enough to not know what's next, but to trust that something sacred is unfolding. Let it be enough to release what you were never meant to carry. Let it be enough to simply return to the flow again and again, as many times as you need. You are not late, you are not behind, you are not broken, you are not too much or not enough. You are exactly where your soul needs you to be learning, shedding, remembering, returning, because you've never truly left. You've only been distracted. You've only been afraid. You've only been trying to manage a river that was always here to carry you. But now you remember. Now you feel it rising in you, the call to flow, the whisper to let go, the sacred courage to stop clinging and start living fully, freely, fearlessly. Flowing is a remembrance, not a destination. You don't become worthy of it, you return to it. It's what you were before they told you who to be, before the world wrapped its labels around your light, before you learned to perform for approval or to hide your wounds beneath a polished smile. The flow was always there beneath the striving, beneath the shame, beneath the noise. It's the you that exists when there's nothing to prove, nothing to defend, nothing to cling to, just presence, just love, just the gentle, patient rhythm of your soul moving in time with the infinite. When you stop trying to carry the weight of your entire life on your shoulders, something holy happens. You begin to feel the hands of the divine beneath you, invisible, steady, holding you even when you can't see them. You stop gripping so tightly to outcomes, and you start trusting in the unfolding. You stop trying to make people stay, and you start honoring the way love expands when it's not possessed. You stop controlling the narrative, and you start living the truth. This is not complacency. This is not apathy. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is the deepest courage there is, to trust your inner knowing more than external noise, to walk away when it dishonors your soul, to release what you've outgrown, even when your hands shake, to say yes to the quiet, sacred, unglamorous process of healing without needing applause, to no longer make decisions from fear, but from the freedom of your spirit. You are not here to be weighed down by old stories. You are not here to live in someone else's version of who you should be. You are not here to repeat ancestral patterns of suffering because you think pain is noble. You are here to break the cycle, to breathe a new breath, to say, it ends with me, not in anger, not in pride, but in clarity, in peace, in love. You are here to choose differently. And every moment offers that choice, to cling or to flow, to resist or to surrender, to live from fear or from freedom. Some days you will forget. That's okay. Some days the grip will tighten again around your expectations, your history, your identity. But each time, the soul will gently remind you, you don't need to hold on. You are held. You don't need to carry it. You are carried. Letting go is not an event, it is a practice, a returning, a loosening, a remembering that the more you allow, the more you align, the more you trust, the more you transform. The more you flow, the more you heal, not by fixing anything, but by finally realizing that nothing essential was ever broken. You are not here to become someone else. You are here to unbecome everything that was never really you. Peel it back. The guilt, the people-pleasing, the perfectionism, the pressure to perform, the need to be understood by everyone, the urge to keep proving your worth. Let it all drop away. Strip yourself of everything that doesn't feel like truth. Watch how light you become when you stop dragging what you were never meant to carry. This is the miracle of flowing. It clears the space for the real you to emerge. Not the wounded self, not the performing self, not the pleasing self, the soul self, the one who trusts timing, the one who lives in presence, the one who doesn't argue with reality, the one who breathes deeply and walks lightly because they've realized that nothing real can be lost and nothing unreal is worth holding on to. And so the healing continues. It deepens. It doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't come with fireworks or grand revelations. Sometimes it's a quiet shift, the moment you don't react to the old trigger, the moment you choose silence over defending yourself, the moment you let someone go without needing closure. That's healing. That's flow. And you begin to realize that you are no longer in a rush. You are no longer desperate for answers. You are no longer searching for validation in eyes that do not know how to see you. You are no longer willing to abandon yourself for love. You are no longer willing to distort your truth just to be accepted. You flow now. You honor the rhythm of your own soul. You listen, not to the fear in your head, but to the knowing in your heart. You allow others to think what they think. You allow life to unfold in its own timing. You allow the unknown to be not a threat, but a temple. You are becoming free, not because the world has changed, but because you have. Because you no longer seek to control what cannot be controlled. Because you no longer fear the silence. Because you no longer need to carry every burden alone. Because you have remembered the sacred truth. The soul doesn't cling, it flows. And in that flowing, you begin to see others differently too. You stop demanding that they stay the same. You stop needing them to complete you. You stop blaming them for your wounds. You stop trying to convince, convert, or change them. You begin to love in a new way, not from need, but from overflow. Not from fear, but from freedom. Not to fill a hole, but to share your wholeness. You forgive, not to let them off the hook, but to unhook yourself from the chain of suffering. You release, not because you don't care, but because you've decided to care for your peace more than your pride. You walk away when needed, not in anger, but in truth. You stay when aligned, not out of fear, but out of love. This is the work of the soul. Not to fight, but to flow. Not to conquer, but to remember. Not to cling, but to let the river carry you home. And the more you do this, the more you will find that what is meant for you doesn't require effort to hold. It fits, it resonates, it flows with you. The people, the opportunities, the visions, they feel light, they feel aligned, they feel like truth. And those that don't, you bless them and release them. No resistance, no resentment, just clarity, just grace. You are not here to suffer. You are not here to earn love. You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to embody your soul. And the soul is not in a hurry. It is not in panic. It is not at war. It is water. It is wind. It is light. And it knows the way. Every moment you let go, something within you softens. The heart opens. The breath deepens. You begin to feel again not the sharpness of suffering, but the quiet pulse of aliveness. And in that aliveness, you meet yourself. Not the idea of you, not the projection, but the real you, the ancient you, the unshakable you. The one who has walked through fire and still chooses grace. The one who has lost so much and yet still sings. The one who has broken, bent, wept, crawled, and yet never forgot the truth, no matter how dim it became in the noise of the world. And the truth is this: you are not your trauma. You are not your past. You are not your wounds. You are the presence that witnessed it all. You are the light that survived. You are the consciousness that continues to rise. Your soul doesn't cling to pain because your soul knows pain is not your identity. Your soul doesn't cling to success because your soul knows success is not your worth. Your soul doesn't cling to certainty because your soul knows that life is never meant to be figured out. It's meant to be felt, danced, lived, flowed with. You begin to understand, not just mentally, but with your whole being. Resistance is the only thing that hurts. Not the event, not the loss, not the ending, the resistance to it, the refusal to let it move through you. The clinging to the idea that it should have been different. The obsession with rewriting the past in your mind. The ego screams, it wasn't supposed to be this way. But the soul whispers, it was. It had to be. Not as punishment, as preparation. Preparation for what? For this sacred moment of awakening, this sacred return to yourself, this sacred choice to no longer live in bondage to the past, this sacred breath of surrender. This sacred decision to let life love you without needing you to control it. You see, now peace is not found in fixing. It is found in flowing. It is not found in having all the answers. It is found in becoming the space where the answers can land. And that space is still. That space is soft. That space is unclenched, unarmored, unafraid. So many of us carry invisible armor. We tighten around life, bracing for impact. We anticipate rejection. We rehearse abandonment. We prepare for loss. We protect ourselves from the very experiences that would set us free. But freedom never comes through defense. Freedom comes through openness, through willingness, through flow. Drop the armor now. It is not needed here. You are safe to be soft. You are safe to be open. You are safe to let go. And yes, your mind will tell you that to flow is to risk everything, that if you surrender, you'll fall apart. But the soul knows what falls apart is only what was never true to begin with. Let the false self unravel. Let the story dissolve. Let the illusion burn. You are not here to live a tightly controlled life. You are here to live a truthful life. And truth has no need for clinging. You don't have to force what's meant for you. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to hold on to love with a white knuckle grip. Love that is real doesn't need to be caged. It flows to you freely as an echo of your own alignment. This is the shift. This is the healing. This is the moment you become new, not by becoming someone else, but by shedding the untrue. And the world around you begins to mirror this. You attract with ease what you used to chase. You release what no longer resonates without fear. You speak your truth with clarity and softness. You stop asking, will they accept me? And start asking, am I accepting myself? Because the soul doesn't seek approval. It lives in integrity. And that integrity is not perfection. It's not a curated image. It's the quiet knowing that you are who you say you are, even when no one is watching. It's the soft power of being at home in your own spirit. It's the lightness of not needing to cling to masks. You are returning to that now, and in your return, you heal. You heal generations of suppression. You heal lifetimes of clinging. You heal the fractured relationship between your mind and your essence. Because flowing is not just personal, it is sacred. It is ancestral. It is collective. When you choose to flow, you liberate others. When you let go, you give others permission to do the same. When you live in presence, you become a lighthouse for those still lost in the storm of control. You don't need to save anyone. Your light is the invitation. Your flow is the medicine. So don't be afraid of the emptiness that comes when you let go. That emptiness is not void. It is space. It is room for the real to emerge. It is the fertile ground of transformation. And in that ground, new life will grow. Not because you forced it, not because you planned it, but because you became available to it. You flowed, and now you see that nothing real is ever lost, that what was taken was only ever borrowed, that what fell away was only meant to walk you to the threshold of your deeper becoming, that every detour was a necessary redirection, that every heartbreak was a holy invitation, that every ending was really a beginning dressed in silence. You see that clinging never protected you, it only exhausted you. You see that control was a disguise for fear. You see that your safety has never been in the known, but in the truth. You see that love, real love, never requires you to abandon yourself. And so you choose again and again to flow, not perfectly, not always easily, but honestly, gently, wholeheartedly. Because flowing is not about being above pain. It's about not becoming it. It's about allowing yourself to feel fully, vulnerably, without letting that feeling become your identity. It's about meeting yourself where you are while still trusting where you're going. It's about no longer carrying yesterday's weight into tomorrow's miracle. Then let us close, softly and clearly, like the last ripple of a river disappearing into the sea. You are not here to grasp. You are not here to control the current. You are not here to rewrite the past or manipulate the future. You are here to be, to open, to breathe, to allow the mystery to move through you like a sacred wind, to become so light that nothing sticks, nothing stains, nothing steals your peace. Flowing doesn't mean nothing matters. It means you no longer suffer unnecessarily over what does. Let the world change, let people leave, let dreams evolve, let chapters close, let the self you once were dissolve into the self you're becoming. Let it all move, let it all flow, because the soul doesn't cling. It flows, it trusts, it breathes, it loves, and it remembers always that nothing real can ever be lost. And neither can you. You are the river. Now flow. In a world that never stops moving, stillness becomes the rarest form of wisdom. We are taught to chase, to climb, to hustle, to conquer. But the soul, your eternal essence, is not impressed by noise. It doesn't race. It doesn't strive. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And in the hush between your thoughts, in the quiet after the questions, that's where the soul begins to speak. Clarity is not something you achieve. It's something you remember. You were born with it, wrapped in simplicity, bathed in presence, untouched by confusion. But as the world's volume turned up, as expectations piled upon you, like bricks on the chest of your spirit, the clarity was buried beneath it all. Not lost, just waiting. Waiting for you to be still enough to feel it again. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of awareness. It is the moment when you are no longer doing life, but being life. And in that being, the fog lifts. You begin to see, not with the eyes, but with the heart. Not with logic, but with knowing. The kind of knowing that doesn't require proof because it is truth. Most people confuse clarity with answers. They think they'll feel clear once they figure it all out, once the past is explained, the future guaranteed, the pain justified. But clarity is not born in solving. It is born in surrender. When you stop clenching the steering wheel of your life so tightly, when you stop demanding certainty from an uncertain world, something miraculous happens, peace walks in. And where peace goes, clarity follows. Let us remember the truth known by sages and saints. You are not here to figure life out. You are here to feel it, to open to it, to soften into it like water returning to the sea. The need for control is the ego's obsession, but the soul has no such hunger. It doesn't need to control. It already belongs. It doesn't need to prove it already is. It doesn't need to race. It already rests. Your inner chaos is not because life is chaotic. It's because you've been avoiding the sacred space within you, the silence. You've been filling every crack in your day with noise, distraction, validation. But clarity doesn't rise through effort. It rises through stillness. It doesn't come from pushing. It comes from pausing. And in that pause, you meet yourself again. You were never meant to carry the world on your shoulders. The world is not yours to control. It's yours to experience, to love, to witness, and to let pass through you like wind through an open field. When you sit in stillness, you remember this. You remember that life is not a storm to be survived, but a breeze to be felt. And in feeling it fully, you return to the truth that you were never disconnected, just distracted. Distraction is the greatest thief of clarity, not because it takes something from you, but because it turns your gaze away from what was always there. Like the sun hidden behind clouds, your light never left. It was only obscured by thought, fear, busyness. And when you finally get still, the clouds part, not all at once, but gently, respectfully, like a curtain rising to reveal your own divinity, waiting patiently behind the veil. The stillness does not shout, it does not force, it invites, and it waits, always waits for you to accept. Not when the to-do list is done, not when the circumstances are perfect, but now in the breath you are taking. Now in the space between your thoughts. Now, in the sacred pause where the mind rests and the soul wakes. And in this waking, something changes. You stop asking life to be different. You stop begging the moment to become something else. You begin instead to listen. To listen not with your ears, but with your entire being. You begin to hear the language of the soul, the language of stillness, and it tells you what no amount of striving could ever reveal. That you are safe, that you are loved, that you are already whole. Stillness is not a task. It is a homecoming, a return, a remembrance of who you were before the world told you who you should be. It is the falling away of every label, every mask, every identity constructed from fear. And as it all falls, what remains is essence. What remains is God not outside you, but in you. As you, moving through you, breathing you, being you. And in this sacred space, clarity is no longer something you seek. It becomes what you are. Let the world keep spinning. Let the chaos outside dance its wild, unpredictable dance. You don't need to control the storm. You only need to find the eye of it, the center. And that center is always still, that center is always you. So sit, breathe, be, and in that stillness, let the illusions dissolve. Let the old stories, the ones that said you're not enough, not worthy, not capable, let them fall like leaves in autumn, no longer needed for the soul's blooming. You are not your past. You are not your fear. You are not the noise of the world. You are the silence beneath it. You are the space between the notes, the rhythm that gives the music its meaning. You see now why clarity cannot be forced, why it resists the grasping of the mind and instead flows through the openness of the heart? Because clarity is not information, it is transformation. It does not fill you, it empties you. And in that emptiness, you finally feel light enough to rise. You become like a feather surrendered to the wind, not passive, not powerless, but free. Free from the illusion that you need to have it all figured out. Free from the belief that healing requires effort. Free from the ego's insistence that you must earn peace. You don't earn peace, you return to it. You don't achieve clarity, you allow it. And all of it begins in stillness. So if you are weary, sit. If you are confused, sit. If you are broken, grieving, lost, overwhelmed, sit. Not to escape, not to avoid, but to arrive. Stillness is the most radical arrival. It is where you meet life without agenda, where you stop trying to be anything and remember you are already everything. In stillness, the soul speaks, and it speaks in a language beyond words, a language made of feeling, of knowing, of being. And what it whispers is this: you are already home. What if the very thing you've been searching for has been searching for you too, not in the noise, not in the chase, but in the quiet you keep avoiding? What if stillness is not just a spiritual practice, but a doorway, a sacred threshold where the divine and the human meet, where the veil thins and truth is no longer something you read about, but something you feel vibrating through the marrow of your being? There's a reason the great mystics sat in silence. There's a reason the prophets wandered the desert. There's a reason the sages withdrew from the noise of cities and climbed mountains to find God. It's not because the divine is far. It's because the world is loud, too loud to hear the subtle beauty of the eternal that whispers from within, too loud to feel the sacred pulse of presence moving in every breath, too loud to hear the soul say, I'm still here. I never left. You just forgot how to listen. You don't need a new path. You need a deeper presence. You don't need to run forward. You need to fall inward, into the holy quiet where your spirit waits patiently behind the storm of your thoughts, into the inner sanctuary where truth does not arrive dressed in certainty, but in peace. And that peace, that gentle presence, is the language of clarity. It does not bark orders or deliver perfect blueprints. It simply clears the debris so the light can shine again. And you have always been that light. The confusion, the anxiety, the overthinking, those are just clouds. And clouds, no matter how dark, can never extinguish the sun. The sun just waits. Still, constant, glowing behind the storm, your soul is that sun. Not in need of fixing, just waiting to be seen again. The world has conditioned you to think answers are earned by effort. That truth is something you must chase, something out there just beyond your reach. But the spiritual life is not about chasing anything. It is about remembering what is already within. It is the sacred reversal, the path not of gaining, but of shedding, of unlearning the noise. So you can return to the knowing. And it takes courage to be still. It takes courage to stop distracting yourself with the next thing, the next goal, the next identity. Because when you finally sit in silence, you meet yourself, not the self you show the world, not the self you've polished and performed, but the raw, trembling, holy self that has been whispering beneath the surface all along. Stillness is not easy. It confronts, it reveals, it humbles, it strips away everything that is false. It forces you to see the parts of yourself you've buried beneath achievement and validation. But it is in this seeing, this honest, sacred witnessing, that you begin to return home. And that homecoming is clarity. Not the clarity that gives you all the answers, but the clarity that says you don't need them, you already are the answer. There's a kind of wisdom that lives in the quiet. It cannot be found in books or sermons or lectures. It is not taught, it is remembered. It is the wisdom of the trees that do not try to grow, but grow. The rivers that do not try to flow, but flow. The stars that do not try to shine, but shine. What makes them divine is not effort, but essence. And what makes you divine is not your doing, but your being. You are the tree, you are the river, you are the star, and you are never more aligned with the truth of life than when you are still enough to simply be. Sit with that. Let it break open the armor of your striving. Let it dissolve the illusion that your worth is somewhere ahead of you. Let it remind you that clarity is not the reward for working harder, but the revelation that comes when you finally stop. And the moment you stop, truly stop, you start to see, you see that your worth has never been in your productivity, that your value has never been in your accomplishments, that your purpose is not something you chase, but something you remember. And what you remember in the stillness is this: you are already whole. You are already held. You are already here. And here is where everything begins. When the mind gets quiet, the heart begins to speak. And it speaks in a different language, a softer one. It doesn't argue or compare or worry. It doesn't say when or if or someday. It says now. It says yes. It says I am. And this I am is the most powerful prayer you will ever whisper. It is not a begging of life to become something else. It is a full-bodied return to what already is. It is the dissolving of ego into essence. It is the surrender of resistance into rest. It is the moment you stop pushing the river and let yourself be carried. So sit. Sit like the mountain sits. Sit like the moon watches. Sit like the ocean waits. Not to escape life, but to merge with it. To merge with the still, unshaken, eternal pulse that has always been inside you. Clarity does not always come in lightning bolts. Sometimes it arrives like dew, soft, slow, and silent, but it nourishes, it renews, it awakens the parts of you that were never dead, just dormant. And in that awakening, you come alive, not as someone else, but as more fully yourself. There is no rush, there is only rhythm, the rhythm of breath, the rhythm of being, the rhythm of love that has no opposite because it was never conditional. The stillness teaches this. It shows you that underneath all your trying is a truth that never needed to be earned. You are the clarity. You are the peace. You are the stillness. And when you stop long enough to feel that, Not just understand it, but truly feel it. You begin to live, not from fear, but from presence. Not from need, but from fullness. Not from ego, but from soul. And the soul, oh, the soul does not rush. The soul knows. The soul flows. The soul rests in the silence because it remembers what the mind forgets, that God is not somewhere else. God is here in the stillness, in the breath, in the now. There's something sacred about silence that terrifies the ego. The ego feeds on noise, on proving, achieving, calculating, defending. But the soul is nourished by stillness. The soul doesn't compete. It doesn't grasp or argue, it simply is. It breathes with the universe. It aligns with the eternal. It remembers. And the more you allow yourself to be still, the more you realize how loud your life had become. Not just in volume, but in expectation. Every moment stacked with demands, every thought laced with pressure, every breath taken like it had to accomplish something. But stillness says otherwise. Stillness says, come as you are, let go of the armor, lay down the need to be more than you are in this moment. It's enough. You're enough. You see, clarity doesn't need you to be perfect. It only needs you to be present. Present enough to witness what's been underneath all along. Not the story of who you think you are, but the truth of what you've always been. The presence behind the personality, the awareness behind the thoughts, the light behind the identity. When you return to stillness, you return to yourself. Not the self shaped by fear or comparison or past wounds, but the self with a capital S, the infinite spark that existed before the world had a name for you. And that spark doesn't flicker, it burns steady. Even when the mind is in chaos, the soul remains calm. Even when life is uncertain, the spirit stays whole. But we forget, we get caught in the swirl. We mistake the turbulence of our thoughts for the truth of our being, and in that forgetting, we suffer. We chase things that cannot fill us. We climb ladders that lead nowhere. We try to quiet the noise with more noise, but the answer has never changed. The way home has never moved. It waits, always waits in the quiet. So sit in the discomfort if it's there. Sit in the emptiness if that's what rises. Sit even when the mind screams that you should be doing something, especially then, because the moment you stop running from yourself is the moment you begin to heal. Stillness is not passive. It is the most radical form of alignment. It is choosing to return when the world tells you to run. It is saying, I trust the silence more than the shouting. And in that trust, clarity emerges. Not as a lightning strike, but as a soft unfolding like petals opening to the sun, one breath at a time. Do you feel it? That gentle remembering that you don't have to strive to be worthy? That quiet hum beneath your rib cage that says you're not broken, just buried? That sacred pull inward that whispers, stop trying, just be? That's clarity rising. That's your soul stepping forward after years of waiting for you to pause, to listen, to come home. Because the soul cannot shout over the ego. It will never fight for your attention. It will simply wait. It will wait while you exhaust yourself with proving. It will wait while you perform for love. It will wait while you carry burdens that were never yours to carry. And when you finally put them down, when you sit in the stillness long enough to hear the silence, it will gently say, welcome back. There is no punishment for forgetting, only pain. The pain of being disconnected from your own light. But that pain too is a teacher. It is not here to destroy you. It is here to guide you not toward more doing, but toward deeper being. Every ache, every doubt, every unraveling moment is a breadcrumb leading you back to the stillness where clarity lives. And when you enter that space, something sacred happens. You stop asking life for explanations. You stop begging the universe to make it make sense. You begin instead to trust, not because you have the answers, but because you no longer need them. You begin to feel the subtle but unshakable truth that you are guided, that you are carried, that you are enough. The world outside may still be loud, but the world within becomes your sanctuary. And from that sanctuary, everything changes. Not because life changes, but because you see it differently. You see it through the eyes of presence, through the lens of love, through the truth of your soul, which was never confused, only unheard. And so you walk differently. You speak with more softness. You listen with more depth. You move with more grace. Not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because you're no longer trying to be anything else. You are finally being what you are, a sacred thread in the fabric of existence, a note in the great song of creation, a soul remembering its light. Stillness teaches you that nothing is missing, that you don't need to chase alignment. You need only remove the noise that's hiding it. You don't need to create purpose. You need only feel the pulse of it that's always been within you. Let go of the idea that clarity is something to be earned. It is not a prize. It is a presence. It arises when you are brave enough to stop, open enough to listen, soft enough to feel. It flows in like a tide, not when you command it, but when you invite it. And it washes away everything that was never true. In the stillness, illusions dissolve, masks fall, armor melts. You become transparent to yourself. And in that transparency, there is nothing left to defend, nothing left to fix, nothing left to prove. There is only truth. And the truth is that you are already whole. You always have been. Stillness does not change your life by adding more to it. It changes your life by taking away what never belonged. The false urgency, the inherited fear, the borrowed dreams, the narratives handed to you by a world that confused motion from meaning. Stillness is the great purifier. It doesn't decorate the cage, it dissolves it. And what's left when the cage dissolves? Freedom. The kind of freedom that doesn't shout or need permission. The kind of freedom that doesn't come with flags or declarations. The kind of freedom that lives in your breath. Quiet, sacred, unmistakable. It's the freedom of no longer being pulled in 1,000 directions. The freedom of finally hearing your own voice again after years of listening to everyone else's. The freedom of remembering that you are allowed to choose peace over performance. When you begin to live from stillness, you no longer crave validation in the same way. You no longer bend yourself into versions that fit the room. You no longer ask people to fill the void that only presence can hold. Because you've tasted something deeper. You've touched the well beneath the world's thirst. You've returned to the source, not in theory, but in living, breathing reality. And from that place, everything changes. You love without attachment. You speak without trying to impress. You listen without waiting to respond. You no longer react, you respond. Because you are no longer driven by unconscious stories. You are awake now, rooted, still. Clarity strips away the unnecessary. It reveals the essence. And when you see with essence, you don't just see more clearly, you see more kindly. You look at your pain with tenderness instead of judgment. You hold your past with compassion instead of shame. You see other people's anger as fear, their cruelty as confusion, their arrogance as woundedness. And you forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Stillness births this kind of clarity. Not the kind that just makes decisions easier, but the kind that makes the heart softer. The kind that lets you walk through the same world, but with entirely new eyes, eyes that see through illusion, that recognize divine patterns in chaos, that find peace not in the absence of noise, but in the presence of awareness. There is a sacred intelligence moving through this universe. Call it God, call it source, call it life. It is not random, it is not cruel, it is precise, gentle, profoundly aware of what your soul came here to remember. But it doesn't force you, it invites you. It will not wrestle your will to the ground. It will wait, and it waits in the quiet. You want to know who you are? Then be still. Don't just sit with the question. Become the space that no longer needs to ask. That's what stillness does. It doesn't answer your questions, it dissolves them. It doesn't fix your brokenness, it reveals that you were never broken. It doesn't give you new ideas. It clears the fog so truth can rise. Like the sun rising, not because it's told to, but because it's what it does. You are not here to be a performer on life's stage. You are not here to be constantly visible, constantly relevant, constantly productive. You are here to be real, to be awake, to be so rooted in truth that nothing outside you has the power to uproot you. And that kind of rootedness comes not from willpower, but from stillness. It's in stillness that you remember the rhythm of life, the inhale and exhale, the expansion and the return, the rise and the rest. You were never meant to run endlessly forward. You were designed to pause, to reflect, to listen, to let the tide carry you back inward before you reach again outward. The clarity that comes in stillness is not about making better plans. It's about no longer needing a plan to feel safe. It's about trusting the unfolding, about letting go of your white-knuckled grip on how you think it should go and leaning fully into the mystery. Because the mystery is not your enemy. It is the birthplace of grace. Do not fear the unknown. Fear missing it. Fear becoming so busy, so distracted, so addicted to noise that you never hear the invitation hiding beneath the surface of your life. The invitation to come home, not to a house, not to a person, not to a belief, but to the timeless space within you that has never been touched by fear. That place is still. That place is whole. That place is where clarity lives. And once you live from that space, the world no longer controls your peace. You no longer chase love, you become it. You no longer fear endings, you trust transitions. You no longer resist what is, you flow with it. And in that flow, everything sacred becomes visible again. The ordinary becomes holy. The mundane becomes miraculous. And so the invitation remains, be still. Not because it's trendy, not because it's spiritual, but because your soul remembers the language of silence. And it's time you did too. You won't find yourself in the next breakthrough, the next relationship, the next success. You will find yourself when you stop running. When you sit in the quiet with nothing to prove, nowhere to get, no one to become. And in that sitting, you will hear the oldest truth echo through your being. You are always it. You were always enough. You are always home. So now, as the breath slows and the noise begins to fade into the background once more, you find yourself standing not at the end, but at the return. The return to what was always real, always waiting, always whispering beneath the rush of the world. This is not a conclusion. This is the moment when all the seeking dissolves and only the stillness remains. And in that stillness, everything becomes clear. You don't need to make life perfect. You don't need to fix every flaw or heal every ache before you are allowed to be at peace. You are allowed now. Not after the storm in it, not once clarity comes, but because clarity comes when you stop demanding it and begin allowing it. The stillness does not erase the journey. It blesses it. It gathers every shattered moment and folds it into a single quiet truth. Nothing was wasted. Every detour was a teacher. Every heartbreak was a mirror. Every silence you avoided was a door back to yourself. You ran, yes. You stumbled. You forgot. But the soul never left you. It simply waited. And now you are ready to listen again. And what does the soul say? It doesn't give you instructions. It doesn't hand you a map. It doesn't require that you understand. It only asks that you trust. Trust the pause. Trust the breath. Trust the invisible rhythm that life has been moving to all along, even when you couldn't hear the music. Let the stillness be your sanctuary now. Let it be your teacher, your guide, your anchor, not once in a while, but always. Let it meet you in the morning before your thoughts begin. Let it hold you at night when your fears return. Let it be the space you return to when the world demands your performance. And you remember, I am not a role. I am not an idea. I am not what others need me to be. I am presence itself. And presence does not perform. Clarity is not a light that flickers on and off depending on your worthiness. It is always shining. It is always speaking. It is we who turn away, we who drown it out. We who run, not because we are lost, but because we forgot we already belong. And now, beloved soul, you remember that silence is not empty, it is full. You remember that surrender is not weakness, it is power. You remember that the pause is not the absence of progress, it is the birth of purpose. You remember that nothing outside you needs to change for you to return home. Because home is not a place, it is a presence. And it lives in you, right here, right now. It always did. So walk on, not with certainty, but with clarity. Not with all the answers, but with the knowing that you are allowed to not know and still be deeply, beautifully whole. Speak less to convince. Listen more to understand. Create not to impress, but to express. Love, not for what it brings back to you, but for the miracle of what it brings out of you. You do not need to be louder, you need to be truer. You do not need to be seen more, you need to see more. You do not need more power, you need deeper peace. And all of it begins and ends in the stillness you were once afraid to sit in. Now you know better. Stillness is not where you lose yourself, it's where you find yourself again. Not the self the world taught you to perform, but the real self, the quiet self, the eternal self, the self that does not need to be explained, only remembered. And so let your next breath be not a rush toward answers, but a return to presence. Let your next moment be not another chase for clarity, but a sacred pause where clarity finds you. You are not here to waste time. You are here to touch eternity, and you do so every time you choose to be still. So be still now, not because the world told you to rest, but because your soul remembered it could. Let this be the moment you stop waiting to arrive and realize you already have. Let this be the end of searching and the beginning of being. Clarity has come, not because the world changed, but because you did. Because you stopped, because you listened, because you remembered who you are. And who you are is enough. Always was, always will be, and now you know it. Clarity comes in the stillness. And in that stillness, you are finally free.